What's up? All right. So I'm ready to start back in today. Um, let's see. It's Wednesday. We missed Monday. On Friday, I did a lot of work on these cards. So this is the current builder version of the site. And you can see this info in the cards is all populated, including if there's endorsements, if there's projects that use this tool, if I have an affiliate link, if they have a showcase link, categories, it's all there. But you can also see, like the heights are a little weird. And if you notice, as I'm rolling over these, there's no hover states or animations. If I refresh, there's not a blank slate like placeholder card in here, and there's not a little animation. So if I refresh, they just kind of snap in basically. Whereas on the current live no code list, you can see right here there'll be one card. Well, first you can see these hover effects where all the other cards press down and the one you're on pulls up. And then if you hover off, all the cards pull up. And then on the refresh, you'll see one card here with like gray bars as placeholders. And you'll see when the cards come in, they have a very small pulse animation. And so my plan today, so there you go. No, it's holding on it. It's nice. The pulse, and then they pop in. So my plan today, I want to do that animation, which is a CSS animation. And there's no UI, there's no interface in Builder for animations specifically. But like everything else, that doesn't stop me from using them in Builder. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And then what I'm going to do with these hovers, right now on the no code list, the hover states are like CSS hovers. And actually, I could pull it up here in code because it's interesting. So this is Sass, so it's kind of like nested CSS. If you know how to read that, you can see what's going on, but I'll try to explain too in case you don't. But basically, I have this cards, which is all the cards, and then I have card, which is a single card. All the cards, when you hover over them, so cards hover, that's what this little ampersand means, like takes the parent there. Cards hover, card. So when you're hovered over all the cards, the card class gets this box shadow, which pushes it down. So that would be... you can see every other one I'm not on pushes down. But then card hover, which will overwrite that last property because it's more specific basically, or it's just the way CSS cascades. Then I get a different box shadow. So it's kind of tricky basically. It's setting an original box shadow for when you're not hovered. Then when you hover over all the cards, it sets a smaller, and then because you're hovered over all the cards, but you're also hovered over a specific card, it changes for that specific card. And I would say that's like a really elegant way to do it in CSS. It's cool to do it that way, but that's not how I'm going to do it with Builder. With Builder, I can do more. So I have this single page of a card here, and I'm already running the whole thing in JavaScript. I'm not worried about like people who don't have JavaScript turned on. So in Builder, I can actually do it with JavaScript hovers, and I can have extra classes being added and removed and have more control because it's so easy to build. And actually, just as a side note, that's something I found in Builder in general, is that things I would do in code to optimize the code, like I would do things that were really efficient on the code end, and I was really, almost like proud of them. That's like something that, you learn to code for a long time and you do these really efficient, clean code things, code solutions. I found that when I'm building in Builder, I try to do that naturally. It's my habit, but it's almost always better just go back to the basics. And because of the way Builder's set up, there's no reason to optimize the code. There's no reason for me to write something so that it's easier to edit later, basically. So instead, I'm way more free to just work on this single page here, put everything on there, do whatever I want. If I want to change it in the future, I come back. It's very easy. So basically it's it's a different method. And so a lot of times I find that in Builder now, I'll force myself to do the simple, straightforward thing. It's easier to manage in the future. It would be much easier if someone else came in to manage, and there's no downside. Like, it's not slowing me down because I have to go to like 6 different files and change the database and blah, blah, blah. All that like tedious kind of like, you know, code upkeep work, that's automatic by Builder. So all that is to say, instead of using this complex or complex-ish CSS stuff, I'm just going to rebuild that using a Builder specific technique. The one thing I am going to take from this CSS is I have an animation at the bottom. And I'll do this. I think I'm going to do the placeholder real quick first, and then I'll get into this, but just want to explain what I'm going to do today. This keyframes is, it's CSS. It's how you make a CSS animation. And then you give it a name down there. It's called Pulse. And then you call it in a regular, you know, CSS style property. So if you remember, we can write CSS on anything because in Builder, because we have a CSS tab, but there's not a good place for me to write the actual animation. So I'm going to do that in a page header. And I'm actually going to refresh this. I just keep this open in between, so I don't know, maybe it got a little jammed up. But I noticed the element panel wasn't opening. So on this card here, on the styling, I can come into the CSS here and put that animation property, that this line here, animate pulse. But there's actually nowhere natively for me to put these keyframes. And so I'll do that in a page header where you can essentially inject any code into a page. I can inject a style tag and then put that animation in, and then I can call it in the CSS in here. So that's what I'll do for that animation. And really all that does is like a little pulse when it comes in, which doesn't really offer much like functionality wise, but makes it seem so much more slick. And I think it's important just to point out while I'm working here, those little details are really important to me. Like, I believe that makes a big difference user interface wise. So just a little pulse, and it's not even long. Like, I think it was like 0.25 seconds or like half a second, you know, or maybe that's a delay. I'm not sure. But either way, that pulse just makes a big difference. So I want to make sure I add it back in. But before I do that, there's a few other quick things I can do to these cards, and then I'll dive into all those styles at once. So the first thing I want to do, at the end of last time, I noticed these cards were a different height, and I tried to add a quick, like basically a flexbox property to it, which works with CSS Grid also, and it didn't work in this case. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to these cards, and I'm going to give them a height of 100%. And what that will do, because this is CSS Grid, that'll make all the heights match or be like full height. So that would be, I'm on the card here. I have a card class. And there's no height on it here. So I'll just add a new property of height. And actually, just because this was a question last time, I realized like it's really important for me to point this out and remind people that this exists. So I'll do it this way too, which this all props view is very helpful if you don't know CSS. So if I don't know CSS properties to come in here and just search for them, I can stay in this all props and it's going to show me all these properties. So these are like categories, but when I drop them down, it'll show me the properties. So if I want height, I think that's going to be under size. I see height. And actually I see like height, min height, max height, line height. But I'm just going to do 100% here. And then when I refresh, this should work. I mean, I assume it will. So yeah, you can see all these cards are now the same height. Now, one thing I noticed last time, it was, I believe, Glenn's suggestion. I used CSS Grid inside of these cards and use a row gap to separate. And I can see it's actually kind of distributing these evenly so the titles aren't lining up, but that's no big deal. I can correct that later. I think the important part for me is that the heights are all lined up. Looks pretty nice. And now what I'll do is I'll go in and I want to set some placeholders in here. But the first thing I'm going to do is, if you notice, nothing shows up until the data comes in. So there's a blank yellow background, and then the cards popped in. But on the live no code list, one card is visible. So it kind of gives you a clue as to what you're going to see while the site loads. That's a technique that you can use instead of a loading icon. And even though that was like pretty fast there, it still warrants some sort of loading indicator. And I could have put like a little spinner when it's yellow, you know, that says loading. But mentally, that is like, tells people they have to wait. That's not great. That's not good. But a card in here and like seeing what it's going to look like and letting the brain kind of start to wrap around what it's about to see is a much better loading indicator. And it's been proven with, you know, people who do this for a living and do tests on this kind of stuff. It's been proven that perceived load time is much less when you use a placeholder over a loading icon. All that to say, that's what I'm going to do. So in Builder, this list of cards here, it's repeating this page. And it's repeating this page based on the Airtable data. So essentially what's happening is this element isn't getting anything visually until we call out to Airtable. Airtable returns, and then we set that data into here. Then it's going to load one of these card pages for every Airtable record. But what I can do with the properties of these list of rows or list of cards element, they're called in Builder, there's a property data to display in editor. Actually, it's already set here, which is kind of interesting. Oh no, I'm sorry. Default data, excuse me. It's already set here, which is kind of interesting. So I'm wondering if something different's happening. But essentially, I'm gonna try it like this and just see if this works. Essentially, this default data is gonna be well, first it's an array. That's what these brackets are for. And then it's JSON. So these curly brackets are name, value, pairs. And you can do more by going like this. So it's name and then excerpt. And that's just how you write JSON. That's not specific to Builder or anything. But this default data means that there should be one card in here. And it actually showed 6 before, so I don't know what was happening because I didn't see them. So it might not show up like I thought, which is interesting. So I'm guessing what's happening is it's pulling in the Airtable data and just taking a second to display it, but it's happening so fast that we're not even seeing that placeholder. So maybe what I'm about to do isn't super important, but that's okay because it'll be fast. Basically, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take these placeholder texts that I made for each section and just replace them. This is like kind of a personal technique. I don't know. People do this in all kinds of different ways, but I usually replace these with bars. And so there's an emoji, an emoticon of a bar. I don't even remember how to find it. This might be one of them. Or a block maybe. Stuff like this. And so I usually like pick one of these. That was actually a weird one, so I'm going to select the one because that was low. Maybe like this. Nice with the placeholder comment. Yeah, it's definitely a great technique. But sometimes overused. That's one thing like I would caution. I just read an article about this, but sometimes people use these placeholders too much. So if you use it for things that don't require placeholders, or if you use it where you have a placeholder there, but then the content's totally different, it can actually throw people off too. So you got to kind of be smart. But the way I think of it is I use these bars and I try to match them to like roughly what the text is going to be, almost to the point where it would look like the text was like blurred there, like half loaded, and then it loads in. And you can actually do that. You can take that a step further. You can put a CSS filter on here that blurs it, literally. So you can have an effect where it looks like the text kind of like blurs and fades in. You can get really advanced, and all that's really helpful. But for now, I'm just going to probably do something with these bars. This bar looks even a little thick. I don't know if I'll use it, but if you copy and paste it, it makes a couple. And like, say like most names would be 2 words, you know, I might go like this or something. And that kind of like, it looks like what the software name would be maybe. And then description, I might just like Actually, I think I just pasted an H2 in there. Let me go like that. What I did was I used a shortcut key on my keyboard from this extra app I have, but I pasted and removed formatting. I could also just like reinsert that emoji. Oops, that was the wrong one. Anyway, for a description, you know, it's like more words like that, something. And I'm gonna keep it one line actually. But yeah, same with all this stuff. And like I said, we're not even gonna see this apparently. So, you know, for now, I'm just doing it. And then this one, I just wrote dashes when I originally made it. So that doesn't even really look super good to me right now. That's like really dark or bold. But I think that would be the effect I would go for. And what I'd probably do is set the opacity of these down or change the, well, you can't change the color because it's an emoticon. So change the color to gray maybe with opacity, something like that. And then when the content loads in, you have to remove that or set the opacity to 1. So what I would normally do to get this effect is I would just turn these notifications off. I would, so this effect here, I would add a class to the card that's called loading. And then I would make everything inside of loading, like the P's inside of it, the H2's inside of it. I would change that opacity down, like, you know, 0.5 or whatever, something like that. And then when the card loads in, remove that loading class, something like that. That's normally what I do. In this case, just to keep it brief and because I can't even show it right now, I don't need to go through all that. I just wanted to sort of talk about placeholders and these kind of things. I actually wish it looked a little better as an example, but hopefully you get the idea. And what I'll do is in between, I'll see if I can get this placeholder to show up. And then next time I'll actually finish it off with the opacities and stuff. But either way, you get the point, and it is a cool thing to do. Let's see. And same goes for images too. Like a lot of times I'll create a placeholder image that's a really small file size. Sometimes PNG. Did you lose me? I think something's up with my internet actually, because a lot of stuff's going slowly. I can see the chat and it says we lost him ? So if you did, I guess, well, you can't hear me, so I don't know how you let me know, but I'm just going to keep going and assume it's going to catch up because everything on my screen shows that it's still going. But yeah, so anyway, we'll come back to placeholder. Looks a little crazy right now, no big deal. Let's do these hovers that I was talking about in this new builder specific way and hope it's recording. So let's see. So the first thing I'm going to do, so I have two first things I can do. The one is on the main block of all cards, I can do something to push the cards down. And then on the hover of one card, I can do something to push it up. But both those things are related. They're both, the way I'm going to do it in Builder is I'm going to create, I have the default with I think this raised up shadow. Yep. I'm going to create a class that creates the push down, the less shadow look. That way, what I can do in Builder is when certain things happen, I can just add and remove that class with an action. And because I'll have a transition property in CSS, it'll do the animate for me. Which is another thing. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier on the live stream, but like I'm in code, in Builder and everything, I'm constantly adding and removing classes and using transition to do little animations. It's just a really easy way to do it. But anyway, I'm going to go to this card page for now. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create like that class, which, so it's raised up first and the class is when it's kind of like pushed back. So let's see. So I have card on here and I have card grid because I set this to be the CSS grid inside of it with the row spacing, and I just added it to a separate class. So it's just grid and a row gap. So I can add as many utility classes as I want. And I'll add another utility class here what should I call this? It's like less raised up. I'm gonna call it card pushed down for now. And like I think I mentioned this like a ton of times in the beginning, but it's just something that a really stark difference from code, something I really love is like it doesn't matter what I name that because I can change it later when it makes more sense or if I change my mind, and it updates everywhere. It's like it's not, there's no code maintenance, so I don't have to care what I call that. So right now on the card, I have this box shadow property, right? What this is shorthand. 1 rem is the X offset, 1 rem is the Y offset, 2 rem is the blur. RGBA and this these numbers is the color with a 0.6 opacity. And then I have a comma, so that means I can have, like, you can have as many box shadows as you want. Now I have a second box shadow that's -1 X offset, -1 Y offset, 2 rem blur, and a color. And that's just the setting, which you can see here is like a dark yellow gold color and then a light yellow top. That's just the effect that's created to make it look like this. But what I want, and I can take this from my code from the original site. So I have the original shadow we just looked at is here. And then cards, hover, card is actually what I'm looking for. I have this box shadow. So it's probably the same colors, I'm guessing. Looks like the same colors, but it's 0.5 on the X and Y offset, and then 0.5 on the blur, and then -0.5 and 0.5 on the blur, instead of -1, 1, and 2 rem. So I'm just going to copy this property here, and then on this card class, push down. Do it through here if I can. Shadow, box shadow, perfect. I'll just paste that in. And so just, I'm gonna show you outside of the all props because it's easier to see. But basically I have card with this box shadow. But right now I have card push down with this box shadow, which overwrites the primary class. So you can see the shadow in here looks more, it's tighter. And if I would remove this push down class, it gets bigger. Now, what's cool about the class setup is that those properties are saved in that class. So I don't want it to start that way. So I really don't even need that on there. But if I ever want to get it back, you know, the card is saved in here and I can just add it back. And that's actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to add it in and out with actions by adding the class. So on this card page, I've got a bunch of actions now. And this is all stuff we've done before where we're checking for if there's endorsements and changing the message. We're checking for an affiliate link, all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to add a new one here, which is sort of universal. And it's going to be like push the card down. I don't even know what I would call it again. So like, I'll just call this, what will I call it? Push down. It's not really the right, it's not, the reason I'm hesitating is I know that's not really the right thing. I just can't really think of what else to call it, but it's a perfect example of being flexible. I'll just call it push down for now. I'm going to call it card push down. I don't know why I want to write card in front. This is on the card page. It's specific to the card page, so I don't need to write that. But anyway, when we push it down, the way we do that is we add a class. So if I search an action for element add style class, all I need to do with this action is choose the style class and choose the element. So the element is this main card element, and the class that I want to add to it is card push down. So now I have this action called card push down, and I'm just adding that class. Now I'll add another action for the opposite, card pull up. Card pull up, I'm going to just remove that class. Remove style class, card push down from card. And so I'm not doing anything with those actions now, but I have them and they're universal. I can call them from this card page. I can call it from a different page and apply to all the cards. And I can also, although I don't actually need to, I don't think in this case, I can call it from a different page and specify using a variable only certain cards to apply it to. So I have a lot of flexibility by setting it up this way and setting it up as an action on the card page. And that's kind of what I mean too with originally with Builder, is like I could set that up in a Builder way. The way I had it before was all with CSS, and it was all based on just CSS. So nothing else could really call that. But in Builder, I can call from anywhere. So I know in the future it's going to be super flexible. But for now, I'm going to set up I'll set up a simple example that'll actually reverse maybe. But what we'll do is when we hover over the card, we'll push it down. And then when we roll off, we'll pull it back up and just apply it to all cards. But I'm going to switch that in a second. But it's just the first step to illustrating it. So this card is this element here. And all the elements have events. And so right now it's defaulting to click, mouse enter, and mouse leave events. But remember, I can actually add any JavaScript event, valid or invalid, which I always say that, but that's just to say you can do a lot of custom stuff in here. You just add whatever you want. But right now, I really just need mouse enter and mouse leave. So when the mouse enters, for now, I'm going to push the card down. I'm just going to run this action, card push down. And then when the mouse leaves, mouse off, I'm going to do card pull up. And I forgot to do the transition, I think, unless I copied it previously, so it might not transition. But you can see the hover. Oh, I did do the transition. So it pushes down. It's pretty subtle right now. So hopefully you can even see that on this video, but it's pushing down and then pulling up. And you can just look at this shadow here. That's what I'm looking at. And I think also, I should just double check. I might have even changed more. So yeah, I also translated Y 4 pixels. So when it pushes down, I have it like physically moving down on the Y-axis 4 pixels. So I'll add that back in too. And then the standard one without anything is just the transition of translate Y of 0. Sorry, not transition. Transform, translate Y 0. So, and that's just CSS. So in Builder, on the main card class, let's see if I already have it, because I copied these originally. Yeah, I don't see a transform. So under, again, I'm going to try to do this in all props today if I remember. So here's transform. And looks like this just has transform in here, which I would write that a little differently. Oh, no, never mind. Transform gets. So this is CSS again. Like you would just have to Google this. It's universal, but transform is the property, and the value I want is actually translate Y0M, like this, like that. And right now that won't do anything. This is the main default class for card. Translate Y0. You don't really have to write the rem here. Translate Y0 is like don't move it on the Y-axis. So it's actually doing nothing. But the reason I have it there is so that it does the transition and that it's just like a little more logical for this class, this push down. So we have box shadow, but now we'll also add translate Y 4 pixels. You may have just seen it move there. So I can probably, so if you watch this card and I remove this class, well, just kind of slid up a little, hard to see. But here we can see it. And again, it's a subtle thing, but that's what all good, transitions and animation, like that subtlety and that detail goes a really long way. So yeah, that actually makes a huge difference. So you can see now it really looks like it's pushing down. And I think that effect is pretty good in there. But that's not actually the same effect. It's a little different on the live site. In the live site, all the other cards push down except the one you're on. So that's a little different. And the way I do that is when you hover over all the cards, we push them down. But when we hover over a single card, we pull it back up. But that's really easy to translate that into Builder. So on this card right now, I have these events. For right this second, I'm just going to remove them. So now there would be nothing. So let's just go step by step. Right, so now there's nothing. But I want it so that when I hover over all the cards, they all push down. So let's try that. So this element here which is this list of cards, that's all the cards. No matter how tall it gets, that element is always all the cards. So I'm actually going to apply the event to the mouse over of all the cards. Now, normally, if I'm on the card page, I just select my action here, right? But in this case, because I'm running an action on a different page, the action to push it down is on the card page, not on this home page. So actually on the home page, I'm going to need to make an action to run this action. So I'll do, and it's like, this is the same thing, but it's applying to all the cards at once. So instead of card push down, I'll say cards push down. And what I'll do, instead of adding the class, you know, I could actually do that. I could actually like choose an element on another page and add a class to it and like recreate the action kind of. But in the idea of keeping everything like do it once, don't repeat it, I'm going to actually just run the action from the other page. That way in the future, if I change that card push down action on the actual card itself, the source of truth, it'll update everywhere. So there's an action called run action on page where you can run an action from one page on any other page. So the first thing I'll do is I'll select the page. In this case, it's the card page. And then I'll select the action. So this is cards push down. So I'm going to select the action card push down. Now in this action, just really quick to note, this will do it on like any instance of this card page. But I actually can also do things here like if I wanted it to only do when the name equals Airtable. If I did that, it'll actually look for a variable name on these cards and only apply this action if the variable name equals Airtable. So that can get pretty powerful as far as like visually, you know, if I have a list on the left side and it's relating to things on the right side, something changes on the right side and I want to put a little marker, kind of like this data marker and, you know, little things. You can do that with these variables. It's a pretty powerful feature that's Builder. That one, for one of the first times I say this, is Builder specific. Usually I'm like, that's just a code thing, but this is like a really cool thing within Builder. So anyway, I don't need that though for this because I want it to apply it to all card pages. So I'm going to run card push down action. And then the last thing I'll need to do is actually on this mouse over I just created, bind this new cards push down. So now it's there. I can tell from that. And let's try it because I might actually have to toggle that one toggle in there, but we'll see. Yeah, something is slow. So hopefully you guys are still seeing me. You might have lost me, but I can tell my internet's slow or something. So anyway, there you go. Now when I hover over, they all push down. I didn't do the hover off yet, so they never came back up. I can't show you beyond that, but we can set that up really quickly. So on this main page, I'll do cards pull up, and very similarly, I'll run action on page. The page is card. The action is card pull up, and then on mouse leave. I don't even see it there, but I can search and just type it. That's what it was called, right? Mouse leave. Cards pull up. Just double check. Oh, I removed it from there. We'll find out. Ah, nice. You guys can hear me. I gotta stop saying guys. You folks can hear me. So, down, up, down, up. And I'm noticing there's a little delay on here. And that is caused from the actual CSS transition property, I assume. Because I just copied this from the original site. So, oh, actually, no. I don't know what that delay is. That might just be my slow computer. I think something's going on. Actually, you know what might be going on now that I say that? I'm in the process of uploading all these videos. I've gotten far enough along that Twitch started removing my original ones. I think it's like 14 days or older. I'm in the process of uploading these to YouTube, and I forgot that's running on my computer in the back, so maybe that's what's happening. But anyway, no big deal. It's still working. It's just a little slow. We can see that that's going. And what I'm going to do next is I have them all pushing down, but now I want the one I'm on to pull back up. So I would just actually go to this card here. And originally we put some events on here that I removed, but I'm going to add them back in and they're technically opposite. So on mouse over and then mouse leave. So on mouse over of the whole cards, it's pushing them all down, but mouse over of the individual card I'm on, I want to pull it back up. So I run card pull up. And then when I mouse off, actually, I don't think I need to do anything, because if I'm moused over all the cards still, this one will push back down. If I mouse off everything, I want them all to pull back up anyway. So I think I'm good. I think I just need on mouse over to pull the individual card up. And I've never tried this way in Builder with this double thing, so hopefully it does work. We'll find out in a second. It's working, but it's slow. So you can see, actually, maybe it doesn't pull back up. Oh, you know what? I do need to add, when the mouse leaves, I actually do need to push this back down, because it's adding and removing a class. It's not like a real-time thing when I mouse over. It's just what I said was when the mouse comes over, add the class pull up. So even if I leave, it's not going to re-add that class or technically remove that class. So I actually did have to do both. But you'll see, I'm guessing just like it's been, like it's all delayed. It'll be a little delayed, but we should be able to see it. All right. Yeah, there we go. So that's looking pretty good. And then when I roll them off, yep, they all come up. So I think that's pretty much accurate, as long as this delay isn't something permanent, which we'll know next time. Then I think that's pretty accurate to what it's going to be, which is this. This isn't delayed, but this is different because this is like all CSS. So it's a little bit of has different processor and, you know, computer ramifications to do it in CSS versus JavaScript. All right, so I think that's good though. I think that's cool there. And then the last thing I'll do for this little transition UI thing is that animation I talked about in the beginning. And what I'm gonna do, the animation itself, like I said, you can't put them anywhere. There's no interface. There will be, but right now there's no interface for an animation, which is like, the reason is it's a block of CSS code, but it's not attached to an element. So in Builder, all the CSS that you write, which can be raw CSS or can be drag and drop, you know, GUI WYSIWYG CSS. Either way, it's all attached to an element. So it's like, I just have this one scenario with these animations where I need to just write CSS. So I come up to this part here, page headers. Page headers are not for CSS necessarily, but what they are is it's a code block that's inserted into the head tag of the page. And one of the properties of CSS is you can put style blocks, style tags in the head tag. So in here, you can see I have a few: cabin Google font, fixed viewport for mobile. These are all things that normally when you code, you put them in the head tag. And some of these, like, I'm not even using, but I just have in here, like Google Charts and Lottie. But basically, you just need, like for Lottie, you need to include a script. So, and for Google Charts, you need to include a script. For the fixed viewport, you need to set this meta tag to make it look good on mobile, that kind of thing. And so that's what we use page headers for normally. But I'm going to use them a little differently, because when you make a page header, all you do is you give it a name. So this would be a pulse animation. And then this value here, you just put whatever code you want to physically show up. Whatever I put in here is going to go to the page and load. So I can write a style block like I would write any other style block in CSS. And, you know, I could actually write properties in here like this. Well, there's no tab right now, so I'm doing that. But I'm going to just copy this and paste it. And what this will do is this would be like if I had this on any style sheet. So on the current no code list, I have this is like a CSS file where I'm calling all the elements as opposed to putting the CSS on the elements like Builder does. So I just have this at the bottom, and I could put this, instead of a file, I can type all this inline into a style block. So I'm not going to do it all because the rest of it's in other places in Builder, but I am just going to paste just these keyframes here into their style block. And what that does is now that allows me to use this pulse animation anywhere I want on any element. So I'll create this page header. And normally you choose which pages you want this header to appear. So, you know, if you have something like, for example, Lottie animation, if I only have a Lottie animation on one page, I don't need that Lottie animation page header on every page of my Builder project. So I'll just specify, like if I had more pages, they would be listed here. I'll just specify some. In this case, I know that basically every important page in the no code list is using that pulse. So I'm just going to say load on all root pages. And that's basically like any page that has a URL. So the card itself that gets loaded into a page is not a root page, but home, and eventually when we do like /agencies, /stacks, they're all root pages. I'm just going to load this animation in all of them. And I know it's not a big deal. I mean, it's a very small bit of code. It's not going to have a big impact either way anyway. So that's that. And now when I refresh, it'll load that pulse animation, but I don't have it actually, the animation itself isn't being used. So I can just go back to this card page here, and I'm just going to go right into CSS for this one. And I'm going to copy it here and just paste it right in. And this CSS here, animation, I'm giving it an animation name. I'm giving it, I think this is a delay. I forget which, I guess that's the length of it. I forget what all of these properties mean now that I tried to explain them. But it's like a shorthand property. So you can have just like background. Technically this background is shorthand. You can also have like background-image, background-size. Animation is the same. You have like animation-repeat, animation-direction. There's all these different properties, or you can write them shorthand. I just have this shorthand. And at the time I made this, I experimented a bunch and tried different things, and I had to look up things like I do for everything, by the way. Like I assume people know that, but when you're building, you're constantly looking things up. I don't remember this stuff, you know, by nature. But I came to this, and so I'm just going to use it. I'm not going to go through all that now. But if this were a new animation that I never made before, I would go through a lot of trial and error to get it just right. And that's where I'd be looking things up and setting these values. In this case, I just know what it is. So let's see, it's in the page header, it's on the card. So I think this will just work now. And what it does on the real no code list, you can see this pulse in like that. And then when they all pop in, they kind of quick fade in. That's all it is. So I haven't ever tried this. I'm doing this live, but hopefully that's going to work on here. It looks like, yeah, they did well, they're doing extra pulses, it looks like. Oh, actually, I know why it's doing that. So I wonder if I'll have to change it. I'll probably change this a little for Builder, but actually remember, if you remember, and if you watched before, it's loading in 100 records at a time because that's Airtable's API limit. And then grabbing the next 100, what it's actually doing behind the scenes is it's taking the current cards that are in there, taking the new set of records and merging them, and then setting that new merge value into the cards. So it's actually running that animation like a bunch of times. So I might have to change how that works. Although it's not the worst thing to like pulse a couple times, it actually looks like, it makes it look like the site's loading kind of still, like that. But I think I'll change how that works. For now, I won't. For now, I wanted to basically show how to do that and how to use a page header, which I got my point across there. The animations are interesting because, well, first of all, they don't have to be that quick. Like you can do a loading icon where it's like, you know, say it's like a circle and it shrinks and grows and changes color and then takes over the screen and then shrinks and, you know, you can do that kind of stuff. And you can actually like step through the animations and control them. You can trigger them on scroll. So some of the really cool sites you see with a lot of like interactivity, they'll take advantage of the animations more than that. That was like a very simple implementation, but at least you see kind of how to implement it and that you can implement it. So let's see. Yeah, I got to figure out why this hover is so slow. Or what's going on there. Something's going on. I'll figure that out for next time. We'll do a little investigating and then come back and we'll go over that. But I think that was all I wanted to do for the cards there. Did the height. Oh yeah, and maybe setting this up. I'll just try that really quickly because I've got about 15 minutes in the hour. So I do want to do, basically I'm going to do the same thing that I did with these cards for the categories. I do want to do that, but I think it's a bigger thing. So I'll do it next week or next time, which would be Friday. But really what it is I'm going to be adding a class. So to get these effects, these hover effects, same exact situation where on this Ghost, this no code list build that's built in Ghost, I did it in like a really slick CSS way where, you know, like I could show it off in a code pen and I could be really proud of it, but it's not very versatile and it's not, you know, someone new to CSS coming in would just be like, what am I looking at? And I did originally try to do that on the live stream where I started in on the like hover befores and hover afters and like each one of these has a bunch of them. But I realized I don't need to do that in Builder. Again, it's a situation where I do these complex things for the code side, because if I did that in the code, it would keep it really clean for me in the code. You know, that's like basically all in here. Like the way I did it with the hovers, it's like 3 lines in here and it's super clean. There's no JavaScript. Like that's why I did it. But in Builder, I can do it by creating a state where there's a plus, creating a state where there's a check, and a state where there's an X, and then just toggling those states based on things that happen, clicks and hovers. And not only is it easier for me to build that way, but it's way easier for someone else to debug. If I were working with a team, it's way easier to make updates to and change. And most importantly, it's way easier for someone with less experience to come in and change. Because that's the biggest part really, is like, I don't want to build something that's so slick and nice for me as a coder, but then someone else can't work in it. It defeats the purpose. So I love that in Builder, I can use these like basic techniques, but they're just as easy to work with in the future. They're just as scalable, et cetera, et cetera. And that comes with Builder, but also just no code in general, I think. I think that's part of a big topic with no code. A big thing that I love is that you don't have to do, like 50% of code is building something. The other 50% is like code maintenance, writing nice code, writing things without repeating yourself, because you know that code has so much maintenance. And I love how no code just takes like 90% of that maintenance and just lops it off and the computer does it for you. So anyway, what was that last? Oh yeah, so I'm just gonna see really quickly if I can line, instead of centering, actually those do look in line to me now. Am I crazy? I thought before that the air slate was pushed down, so maybe that is in line. Oh, never mind, I'm looking at the live real version. So here, yeah, see it, like air slate is a little lower than a Dalo here. And the reason is because all of this content is vertically centering, whereas all this is bigger content. It's, you know, but they're just vertically centering. So I'm going to see if I can get this to align flex start. And I did this before too, where like I'm using CSS grid, but I'm using flex properties and they sometimes work. It actually didn't work last time, so I'm just going to try it again and see what happens. But this is the cards class that's on all these cards, which is right here, display grid. And then I have the grid template, which sets it to be 3 across, the column gap here, a row gap for when there's more rows. And then I'm just going to add align items and see if flex start. So basically aligning items to the top. I'm going to see if this works. Last time I did stretch and it didn't work, so this might not actually work. Aha, looks like it did work. Oh, but it took the height off. Okay, so that's okay. I'll figure out how to do this in a better way. Maybe that's a little more specific. But what this aligned it to the top, probably the whole thing, and then took the height off. So it's not really what I'm going for, but it's good to actually show how, even as an experienced coder, like I just do things like that, trial and error, and like, it didn't work, I did a different way. Like the height conflicts with whatever, you never know. I just know from so much time using these CSS grids and CSS Flexbox, I just know that certain times height matters, margin auto matters, and this like align items and justify content. Those are the vertical align items, horizontal justify content. All those properties work together in like crazy ways. If you're an expert, you probably know them. I at this point sort of generally know them, but I always need to look that stuff up. So maybe what I'll do is play around, get more specific, and just figure out the right way to do that. But in real life, if I were doing it, if I weren't on a live stream right now, I would just change a bunch of those properties until I got what I wanted. And then I'd be like, oh, that's how you do it there. And then move on. So just wanted to share that, I guess. It's a little weird. I feel like it's a little weird, but really like that's how I've coded my whole life. And I am self-taught. So maybe someone with a CSS degree would say that's crazy, but I just, that's how I learn and that's how I code. And so sometimes I see beginners come into stuff and they think that all the answers are there and you remember all the answers and you just learn how to code and you just start typing, but that's very far from the truth, at least for me. So let's see. I think I'll probably wrap up for today a little early because I don't want to dive into anything else right now. But it looks like I can take care of that spacing, and I noticed I need to add commas if there's more than one category here. But I think I'll take care of all that next time and maybe head into these categories. That probably makes the most sense. Once we do categories, style up this menu. There's a few drop downs in here, and this isn't styled. Add a couple styles to the search. I think the search works. I did this before, yeah. So we'll actually be pretty close to done with the homepage. I don't remember if I put a footer in there or not, but footer would be like one small thing. Yeah, there's no footer. So we're almost done with this homepage, which is a large chunk of what the site is. And then I'll build like a resources, agencies, and stacks page. They're the same thing, but I changed the value in Airtable to query a different table. But otherwise, they're like all the exact same thing. So I'm really just going to duplicate these pages, keep all the same actions and whatever, and just, you know, run them that way. This card page, what's cool about it is it's the same card page. This one thing here will go across all those different pages and all the different sections. So I can make changes here and it'll just update. Although now that I say that, maybe some other cards have different content. If they have different content, I'll have to make a separate card, but no big deal. And then after that's all in place, that's like a majority of the site that exists now. There's more things that we can do, like the individual software pages. There's membership, which is users. I'm going to build those native in Builder. I'm going to add upvotes, which aren't on there now. That's native in Builder. And then I'm going to do better commenting. Right now, the comments are in Airtable. I'm going to move those comments into Builder. So because I'm using Builder, I'll have more flexibility on those things. But the list itself, I love having an Airtable, because it's just this spreadsheet here. I can update it on my phone. It's even got some other stuff built in with Airtable automations that it does. And stuff with Zapier too. Like when I post these over the week, they get put into a separate table for, you know, which ones need to go out in the email. So on the Friday emails, I come into here and grab those 4. And actually, that cool to mention, after it's in Builder, I'm going to probably automate that process. But that's separate. That's like a nice to have. So yeah, so there's lots more I can do. And I'm kind of in the process now where I've gotten some good feedback on this. And I'm deciding what the best thing to do is as far as finish every detail of no code list, even repetitive stuff, or maybe talk about all the main topics, which there still are plenty of main topics on no code lists, get through all those. And then instead of finishing up the details live, I might actually move on to another project called Joust List that I've previously started rebuilding in Builder. I was thinking it'd be fun to finish that out live. And then after that, who knows? You know, I've got some other projects that I have never started that I would love to build in Builder. I would also love to build something where the community gives ideas on something to build and I build it. And also as Builder, we talk often about, you know, social good and that kind of thing. And Cora had mentioned, when I said that idea originally, Cora had mentioned we should do something for social good, which I really love. So I think more will come from this live stream. If you have any opinions on that or what is exciting or what is engaging, I'd love to hear it. because I'm sort of molding this as I go. And one thing I notice is the live viewing numbers. They're pretty low, I would say. I don't know how many streams people viewers people normally get. I would say they're pretty low, but the engagement I'm getting outside of the live stuff is pretty high. And so it's giving me a lot of motivation. So first of all, thank you so much. I mean, it's awesome that people care about this, but I want to make sure that I'm not wasting anyone's time and doing like the good things people want to see. So if you do have feedback, let me know, and I'm going to keep evolving this and hopefully making it into something even cooler and even more beneficial. And then last thing I'll say, I mentioned a second ago, but I am in the process of putting all these onto a website where you can go through and just watch the build front to back if you want. And then hopefully I can either transcribe them or somehow mark different videos with different sections so you can kind of search for what you're trying to do and quickly go for how to do it. But we'll see. That's one of the things I might do in the future is form the live streams around a topic more instead of being so random, but we'll see. I'm going to stop for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll do this again on Friday.